Liam Carter, a self-made millionaire entrepreneur, was stepping into the most important day of his life, his wedding to Scarlett Hayes. As the founder and CEO of a renowned tech conglomerate, Liam had built a career that many could only dream of. His marriage to Scarlett was not just about love, it was seen as the perfect alliance between two powerful families. Scarlett came from a prestigious lineage, with her father, Mason Reed, being a prominent figure in the financial world. Their wedding was the most anticipated event of the year, drawing not only elite guests but also extensive media coverage. The ceremony was set on a luxurious beachfront where rows of pristine white chairs were meticulously arranged, all facing a magnificent floral arch. The golden hues of the late afternoon sun stretched over the shimmering blue ocean, creating a scene straight out of a fairy tale. Among the guests were influential figures from the business world, politics, and entertainment, all eagerly awaiting the sacred moment when Liam and Scarlett would exchange their vows. Photographers stood at the ready, prepared to capture the picture-perfect couple in what was expected to be an unforgettable moment. Liam stood at the altar dressed in a flawlessly tailored suit, exuding the aura of a successful man. Yet, even amid the lively atmosphere of celebration, a faint unease crept into his mind. It wasn't doubt about the marriage itself, but rather an inexplicable feeling, as if something important was slipping through his fingers. He took a deep breath, forcing the thought away, convincing himself that after today, his life would transition into a new, fulfilling chapter. But what he didn't know was that in just a few minutes, his entire world was about to change forever. Liam stood at the altar, trying to steady his breath as the wedding music began to play, signaling that the most important moment of the ceremony had arrived. Scarlett, dressed in a pristine white gown, walked toward him with graceful confidence, her golden hair shimmering under the glow of the setting sun. Everything was perfect, exactly as it had been planned for months. But then, a sharp, high-pitched bark shattered the solemnity of the ceremony. From behind the rows of seated guests, a small dog, Milu, darted onto the wedding aisle with an enthusiasm that was completely out of place. It dashed through the aisle, weaving between polished designer shoes, kicking up grains of sand with each step. Guests murmured among themselves, some chuckling in amusement, while others frowned at the unexpected disruption. Liam furrowed his brows, but before he could react, a strange feeling crept into his chest. Chasing after Milu was a young boy, about 4 years old, with wide, round eyes and slightly curled hair. He wore slightly oversized shorts, his flushed cheeks revealing the effort it took to keep up. But what made Liam freeze in place was the boy's face, shockingly familiar. A strange sensation ran down Liam's spine. The boy stopped right in front of him, breathless, staring up at him with wide, unblinking eyes, as if he had just seen something impossible. And then, from the crowd, a panicked voice rang out, "Noah!" A woman rushed forward, her face filled with shock. Liam turned toward her, his heart clenched. Time seemed to stop. Standing before him was Amelia Rose, the woman he had once loved, the woman who had vanished from his life years ago. Liam stood frozen. The once lively sounds of the wedding faded into nothingness, leaving only the soft crash of waves against the shore and the pounding of his own heartbeat in his ears. Amelia Rose. Her name swept through his mind like a sudden storm, unraveling memories he thought had long been buried. She stood there, worry etched across her face, but her eyes, those familiar, haunting eyes, held a look he could never forget. "Noah," she whispered, quickly stepping toward the boy. Noah. The name echoed in Liam's head, each syllable cutting through his reality like a blade. The boy remained standing in front of him, his wide, round eyes locked onto Liam's, as if searching for something, something familiar. A cold chill ran down Liam's spine. Those eyes, that nose, that face, it was too familiar. It was his. A suffocating silence settled over the ceremony. Guests held their breath. Photographers raised their cameras, eager to capture the scandal unfolding before them. Scarlett, still standing near the altar, clenched her fists, her expression shifting from confusion to pure horror. "Liam," she whispered, her voice unsteady. "What the hell is going on?" But Liam couldn't look away from Amelia. "Who is Noah?" His voice was hoarse, thick with something between fear and disbelief. Amelia opened her mouth, but the words seemed impossible to say. She glanced at Noah, then back at Liam, her eyes brimming with emotions, pain, fear, and an undeniable truth. Finally, she spoke. "Liam, Noah is your son." Amelia's words detonated like a bomb in the heavy silence. "Noah is your son." The sentence echoed in Liam's mind, making everything around him blur into the background. His heart clenched, his body turned rigid, and his mind spun with 1,000 unanswered questions. A son? He had a child? Scarlett gasped, her face draining of all color as if she had just been struck by a devastating blow. "No, no, that's impossible." She shook her head frantically, her eyes wild with disbelief and fury. Mason Reed, her father, stepped forward, his expression dark with rage. "Enough! Get this woman out of here immediately!" he bellowed, signaling to the security guards. The guards moved swiftly toward Amelia and Noah. Instinctively, Amelia clutched her son tightly, her eyes wide with panic. Noah, confused and frightened, clung to his mother's dress, his small hands trembling. But before they could get any closer, Liam snapped out of his shock. "Stop!" His voice boomed across the beach, sharp and commanding, sending a ripple of shock through the crowd. The guards froze in place. Liam's eyes blazed as he turned to Mason Reed, then to Scarlett. "No one touches them." His voice was low, firm, filled with authority, a voice that no one dared to challenge. Scarlett looked at him in utter disbelief, her breath uneven. "Liam, don't tell me you actually believe this." She let out a nervous laugh, but it was edged with hysteria. But Liam didn't care about Scarlett's reaction. He didn't care about Mason's fury, the stunned guests, or the flashing cameras capturing the scandal of the year. He only saw Noah, the little boy still clutching Milou, his big eyes filled with fear. Liam's emotions surged, anger, confusion, disbelief. But there was something else, something he couldn't deny. He took a step forward, locking eyes with Amelia, his voice heavy with demand. "I need the truth." His words carried weight, unshakable and absolute. "Why didn't you tell me?" Amelia clenched her trembling hands, her gaze flickering between Liam and Noah. She could feel the storm brewing inside Liam, anger, shock, pain, and a deep, overwhelming sense of doubt. She swallowed hard, trying to steady herself under the weight of the dozens of eyes fixed on her. But before she could say a word, Scarlett lunged forward, her voice laced with fury. "She's lying, Liam. Don't let her manipulate you." Scarlett practically screamed, desperation flashing in her eyes. She grabbed Liam's arm, gripping it tightly as if to pull him back to her. "We have a wedding, a future, and you're going to throw it all away for some woman who appeared out of nowhere?" Liam jerked his arm free, his eyes flashing with a cold, piercing glare. Out of nowhere? He let out a bitter laugh, though inside it felt like a blade cutting through him. "Scarlett, she's not out of nowhere. Amelia is the woman I once loved." Scarlett stumbled back a step, her face paling as if those words hurt more than any physical blow. Mason Reed, standing behind his daughter, finally lost his patience. His deep voice carried over the tense silence. "Liam, don't forget who you represent. This wedding isn't just about you and Scarlett. It's a strategic alliance between two families." Liam let out a dry, humorless chuckle, but his gaze softened when it landed on Noah, the small boy clinging tightly to Amelia's dress, his wide eyes filled with confusion and fear. His chest tightened. An alliance? A deal between two families? Was that more important than his own flesh and blood? Liam inhaled sharply, then turned back to Amelia, his expression sharp and demanding. "I don't care about this wedding anymore." His voice was steady, unwavering. "The only thing I want to know now is, why did you keep Noah from me all these years?" Amelia looked at Liam, her eyes filled with pain and regret. She clenched her hands tightly as if searching for the right words to explain a truth she had carried alone for years. Between the crashing waves and the expectant gazes of hundreds of guests, she knew there was no escaping this moment. "You think I didn't want you to know?" Her voice trembled, but it was thick with frustration. "You think I wanted to raise our son alone without you by my side?" She took a deep breath, fighting to keep herself from breaking down. "I tried, Liam. I tried to reach you, but you weren't there anymore. You disappeared from my life." Liam frowned, his initial anger shifting into confusion. "I disappeared?" he repeated, his voice laced with disbelief. "I never got any messages from you." Amelia let out a bitter laugh, one that held no joy. "Do you have any idea how many messages I sent? How many times I called, only to be ignored?" Her voice shook with emotion. "After we broke up, you buried yourself in your work, cutting off everything that once connected you to your past. I sent letters, Liam, but maybe they never reached you. And then—" Her voice faltered as her eyes drifted down to Noah, the little boy clutching her dress, his innocent face watching the two of them with uncertainty. "And then I had to accept the reality that I would be raising Noah alone." Liam stood frozen, his mind reeling. Memories began piecing themselves together. Those years, he had drowned himself in work, built an empire, and left everything from his past behind. But had he been so consumed by ambition that he unknowingly closed the door on the one person who had truly mattered? He looked at Amelia, his chest heavy with the weight of a single question. "Why didn't you try one more time?" Amelia bit her lip, her eyes reflecting exhaustion, pain, and memories she wished she could forget. She tightened her grip on Noah's small hand, as if drawing strength from her son to face the man who had once meant everything to her. "You think I didn't try?" Her voice was hoarse, filled with both accusation and despair. "You think I never stood outside your office, only to have your secretary tell me you didn't have time?" Her eyes burned with frustration. "You think I didn't call again and again, only to be met with cold, automated responses?" Liam opened his mouth to protest, but then the memories hit him like a tidal wave. Those years when he had thrown himself entirely into work. The times he had ignored personal calls, let messages pile up, and left emails unread. He had told himself he was securing his future, that he was building something bigger. But in doing so, he had unknowingly lost the most important thing of all. Amelia took a deep breath, her voice softer now, but still as sharp as a blade cutting through his chest. "At some point I realized I couldn't keep chasing after someone who didn't want to look back." She held his gaze, her eyes filled with sorrow. "So I chose to walk away. I chose to protect Noah from the pain of being abandoned, because I refused to let my son grow up hoping for a father who would never show up." Her words hit Liam like a punch to the gut. He looked down at Noah, the small boy who should have had him by his side all these years, the child he should have watched grow up. His chest tightened with an overwhelming wave of guilt. He hadn't been there, and that was his fault. Scarlett, who had been silently watching, couldn't take it anymore. She stepped forward, her eyes blazing with fury. "So what?" Her voice was laced with venom. "Liam, what are you going to do? Throw away our wedding for a child from your past?" Liam turned to face her, but this time there was no hesitation in his gaze. "Scarlett, I'm not throwing away this wedding for a child from my past." He paused, his eyes shifting back to Noah, his son. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, filled with a certainty he had never felt before. "I'm choosing my son, my present and my future." Scarlett stood frozen. Her eyes widened. Her lips trembled as if she couldn't comprehend what she had just heard. "What are you saying, Liam? This is the life we planned. This is the future you chose." Her voice cracked, her hands clutching the fabric of her wedding dress, as if trying to hold on to something that was slipping away. Mason Reed stepped forward, his face dark with anger. "Liam Carter, do you have any idea what you're doing? Are you really going to destroy everything over some unexpected complication?" This wedding isn't just about love. It's a strategic alliance between two families. Do you even realize what you're throwing away? Liam took a deep breath, feeling the crushing weight of expectations, pressure, and responsibility pressing down on him. But when his eyes fell on Noah, the small boy still clinging to Milu, looking up at him with innocent uncertainty, he knew there was only one right choice to make. Turning to face Mason, Liam's voice was calm but unwavering. I know exactly what I'm giving up, but I also know that I can't go through with a marriage built on pressure and expectations. He shifted his gaze to Scarlett, his expression filled with empathy, but no hesitation. Scarlett, I'm sorry, but I can't marry you. A wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd. Guests gasped in shock, whispering among themselves as the reality of Liam's decision sank in. Scarlett stood motionless, tears pooling in her eyes, but she said nothing. Mason clenched his jaw, looking like he was about to argue, but Liam no longer cared. He turned his back on all of it. The wedding, the guests, the expectations. And walked toward Noah and Amelia. Kneeling down in front of his son, he met those wide, curious eyes and spoke softly but firmly. Noah, would you like to take a walk with your dad? Liam knelt before Noah, facing his son for the first time without any barriers between them. The little boy blinked his wide, round eyes, glancing between his mother and Liam in confusion. Milu wagged its tail softly, sensing the tension had shifted into something gentler. Take a walk? Noah repeated, as if trying to grasp the meaning behind the words of the man standing before him. Amelia looked at Liam, still hesitant. She wasn't sure if he truly meant what he was saying, or if this was just an impulsive decision in the chaos of a canceled wedding. But when she met his gaze, no longer lost or conflicted but filled with sincerity and certainty, she gave a small nod. Noah reached out and took Liam's hand, his small fingers warm in Liam's grasp. Okay, the boy said simply. Liam felt something inside him tighten, a feeling so profound it nearly took his breath away. Behind him, Scarlett stood frozen, still unable to accept reality. She shook her head in disbelief, stepping back as Mason placed a firm hand on her shoulder, whispering something to her. But Liam didn't look back. He didn't care what Mason would do next, what business deals would fall apart, or what the media would say. Because he had just found something far more important than all of that, his real family. Liam took Noah's hand and walked away with Amelia as the golden sun dipped toward the horizon. Every step carried irreversible change, but for the first time in years, Liam felt light. No more empty obligations, no more choices made for power, just the truth he had ignored for far too long. As they left the resort, Liam offered to drive Amelia and Noah home. She hesitated at first, uncertain of how to bridge the gap between their past and present. But when she saw Noah happily chatting away with Liam, she nodded. They got into the car, and for the first time, Liam stepped into the life he should have been part of all along. Throughout the ride, Noah's excitement never faded. He chattered about his favorite things, building wooden models, stories of great inventors, and most of all, his love for puzzles. Liam smiled, recognizing more of himself in the boy than he ever expected. Amelia sat quietly, watching them, her heart swelling with emotions she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. This moment, this picture of the three of them together, was something she had once believed she would never have. When they finally arrived at a cozy little house, Noah jumped out first, Milu trotting after him. Liam and Amelia stood at the doorstep, the air between them no longer filled with resentment or distance, but with something much deeper, a quiet understanding only two people who had lost each other could share. Are you sure you want to be here? Amelia asked, still cautious. Liam took a deep breath, looking straight into her eyes. I don't know what the future holds, but I know one thing. I won't lose Noah again. A soft breeze carried the scent of new beginnings. Amelia smiled, just a little. But for the first time in years, she felt that maybe, just maybe, they could find their way forward together. Inside the house, Noah giggled as Milu jumped onto his bed. Amelia glanced at Liam, then quietly pushed the door open, an invitation that didn't need words. Liam stepped inside, closing the door behind him, not just on the past, but on the life he had left behind and the future he was ready to embrace. A lesson learned life doesn't always go as planned. Sometimes the most unexpected moments turn out to be the greatest gifts. Liam Carter spent years chasing success, believing he was building a secure future. But in doing so, he had unknowingly let go of the one thing that truly mattered: family. When given a second chance, he made the hardest decision of his life, not to hold on to power, but to reclaim what he had lost. This story isn't just about love that was left behind, it's about redemption. It's about a man learning how to be a father, and most importantly, it reminds us that fame fades, fortune comes and goes, but love and family, if we cherish them, will always remain our greatest treasures.